How many times has this happened to you? You're getting all your stuff ready for a fishing trip the night before or the morning of or something like that. You go through all your rituals, man. You get down to the spot and you cast and you cast and you cast. And it's just like the fish aren't even there, man. There's a feeling of frustration and a feeling of failure. But here's the truth on those sessions. Every single one of those sessions is what separates the average angler or the average lure angler or fisherman from the true expert. Today we're going to talk about how to transform those frustrating sessions into one of your best allies to learn, grow, and get motivated to get back out on the water, dude, because believe me, there is no session that's not a learning session. The most valuable lessons are always disguised as bad days. So today we're gonna go over 7 things, and after you finish watching them all, I want you to be able to go home after no catches, maybe even losing some lures, and have that motivation to get back out on the water, dude. But just before we get to that part, I want to ask you this one question. Why do we fail at fishing? Why? All of us have experienced this part. You get down to the perfect spot, you've got all of the perfect gear, and still there's no fish. You do everything that you feel you need to, and there's still no fish there. But why does this happen? You could blame the weather, you could blame the tides, you could blame the wind, you could blame the fish. Dude, you could blame the universe if you want. The real question is not why you failed, but what are you going to do with that failure? What have you learned, and how are you going to use it going forward? Fishing doesn't always reward you with fish, man, but every time it rewards you with lessons, something that you learned. Throughout this video, I'm going to leave you with a couple of sayings that just might blow your mind if you know how to use them and you put them into practice properly. And the first one that I'm going to bring up is that you've got to change your mentality. Failure does not exist. Remember, failure does not exist. Stop seeing them as failures, and instead of thinking, I didn't catch any fish, my lures suck, my fishing sucks, I'm gonna take up golf, ask yourself this. Number 1, what did I learn about this place that I didn't know before? Number 2, what conditions did I face that were new to me and that I can adapt to next time I'm out or next time it happens? And number 3, what can I improve in my technique next time I go out? Part number 2, analyze the day and take a complete diagnosis of what happened. After each day without any catches, if you don't get anything, there's no blow-ups, there's no nothing like that, instead of going home frustrated and in a bad mood, ask yourself, was I even in the right place? The location's not a minor detail. If there's no movement in the water, if there's no bait fish in the water, if there's nothing for them to eat there, they're not going to be there. Fish aren't distributed in the areas just willy-nilly. I mean, there has to be food there, there has to be shelter there, there has to be cover there. There's got to be things for them to be able to be there. They're not just gonna be there, man. What you want to do is look for cover and shelter. Is there weed beds there? Is there structure there? Is there rocks there? Is there any changes in depth? These are the kind of things where the fish cruise around, and this is what this is where they're going to be. If there isn't any of that there, there's probably not going to be any fish there. If I'm completely honest with you, I'm just going off what I've learned over the past, and I'm sharing it with you. Make sure that there is structure there, weed beds, rocks, sunken boats, posts, anything like that, so you can ensure that there's fish there, dude. And you have to make sure that there's an availability of food. If there's no food there, there's probably not going to be any fish there. If you pull up to a spot and there's no birds, there's no current, there's no little bait fish popping off the top, things like that, you might want to go and try somewhere else, maybe. Because if there's no food there, like I said, there's going to be no fish there. Another thing to look for is current or movement in the water. Predatory fish are really keen on some oxygenated water. So if it's moving, that's great. If you've got a flat sea, go find yourself some current. They love current, dude. I'm telling you, because it's moving. The bait fish are coming to them. They don't have to chase it. Bass, predatory fish, especially bass, are opportunistic feeders. They would rather sit on the outside of a band of current and wait for the fish to come to them. If they could just sit there with their mouth open, they would absolutely do it. And I think half of the time, that's what they do. And that leads me to the next point. The next point is, when you get out there with your lures, especially soft plastics, make sure that you are matching the size of the bait fish that are out there. If there are a lot of times that you can throw out a big, huge, giant soft plastic, and if the bait fish that are there aren't that big, one, it can probably spook the fish off. Number two, that's not what they're looking for, so they're not going to be interested with it. If you get to your spot and your bait fish are this big, then use a lure that's that big. If they're this big, use a lure that's that big. Another point is color of lure. In clear conditions, try and use natural colors. In like cloudy conditions, you can use brighter colors, yellows, whites, silvers, things like that. Clear water, you want your browns, olives, sometimes even black. So when you get to a spot, observe where you are. Look for signs of activity. Small bait fish hitting the top, birds on the water. Look for things like that. If those things are there, have a few chucks, try it out. If there's nothing hitting, don't stay on one spot, move a little bit. I don't mean go back and get in your car and drive to somewhere else. Stay in a spot. But if you're casting straight out that way and you've sat there for 2 hours, cast, and nothing, don't stay there, because there's probably nothing there. Move 100 feet down the shoreline and try again. Don't stay fixed in one place. You have feet, use them and move. And every time that you find a productive place, write it down, take a mental note, stick it in your phone, take a picture of the spot that you're at, take into consideration the depth of the water, the conditions outside. Is it cloudy? Is it sunny? Was it raining? Was it windy? Which way was the wind blowing? What time of day was it? Was it first light? Was it in the middle of the afternoon? Was it in the evening, last light? Was the tide flooding? Was the tide coming in, or was the tide ebbing? Was the tide going out? If you take a mental note of all of that stuff, eventually, after a while, you go back to your notes and you start to see a pattern. So doing that and your patterns, you can say, right, so I went to this spot on this day. It was these conditions. It was cloudy. This, just for an example, it was cloudy. It was a southerly wind and it was on the flood. Today, those conditions are exactly the same. So I can almost guarantee you, if you go back to that same spot from your notes on that day, you'll catch. Keep notes, man. Mentally, write it down, take a picture, stick it in your phone, keep notes of everything that you do. So now let's talk about the lures. When you go out, take a note of the lure that you used as well. And if you didn't catch, you need to ask yourself, was it really the right lure for those conditions? I mean, for example, was it the right color? Was it the right size? Because like I said before, sometimes size of the lure can spook the fish and really not bring them in. You got to match that hatch. The fish are feeding near the bottom and you use a surface lure like the S Petite. If they're fishing near the bottom, it's not going to attract their attention. And it's the same thing. If the fish are chasing fast bait or they're getting bait off the top 9 times out of 10. A lure, soft plastic that's down on the bottom isn't going to attract their attention either. So you got to make sure what you're seeing, you match your lure selection with that. If they're on the top, go for a surface lure. If you don't see anything on the top, but you see all your conditions are right, there's oxygenated water, there's cover, there's current, but they're not on the top, try a soft plastic. They might be a little bit lower down in the water column and you might catch them there. Here's a little trick for you to use and probably enhance your lure selection on when you go out. I can't reiterate enough. I can't tell you how important it is to observe what's going on in the area that you're fishing. Are they fishing on the top? Put a surface lure on. Take time to observe what color the bait fish are. Match that color as close as you can with your lures. If you clip on a lure, don't stick to that one lure. Try different colors, try different sizes. If it is a surface lure, you might have a white one on. If they're not hitting that, try a blue one. If they're not hitting that, try a clear one. And it's the same with soft plastics. If you're in an area where soft plastics you think are going to work and you've got a 12 centimeter on, if nothing's hitting that, but you know that there are fish there, again, look at your bait fish, put a 10 centimeter on, weight it so it moves like the bait fish that are there. You don't want those lures to be unnatural. You want them to match what's going on in the water, match what's the bass are looking for. If you match what the bass are looking for, it's going to help you a whole hell of a lot. Sometimes carrying a whole entire box or a whole backpack full of 100 lures of different sizes and different colors and different all of that stuff, man, won't be as effective as carrying 3 lures in 3 different colors and 3 different sizes. And I'll say it again, write things down, because if that lure was working for you once in that spot, it's probably going to work for you again. Write down what lure you were using. Write down the color of it, write down the size of it, write down the weight of it, write down how you were retrieving it. The right lure not only attracts the fish, but it gets them to freaking attack it, dude. And that is what we live for, man. Here's another thing to remember. Fish don't only react to their environment, but they react to conditions. They react to barometric pressures. They react to moon phases. They react to water temperatures. All of those things are variables that you need to think about when you go out fishing. If the water's colder, they tend to move less. If the water's warmer, they tend to move a little bit more. If there's bait fish there, they tend to move a little bit more. If there's no bait fish there or anything for them to eat there, they tend to move a little bit less. They're on the hunt. They will move. I've said it a whole bunch of times. The fish won't come to you. You've got to go to the fish. So if there's nothing there, move, man, just move. Now let's talk about the wind. Wind is the bane of my existence. I can't stand the wind. It bugs the crap out of me. But it influences where your fish will be, how they will act, how they will react, if they're going to be active on that windy occasion. Which way is the wind going? Some places will fish better on an easterly wind. Other places on an easterly wind, it's absolutely dead. Some places will fish better on a westerly wind, and other places it's absolutely dead. In windy conditions where the wind is pushing some movement on the tide, that gets the bait fish going, that gets the water oxygenated, and bass and predatory fish take refuge in that oxygenated water. And plus there is bait fish there. Like I said earlier, if there's food there, there's going to be some fish there. Now let's talk about the light. Let's talk about sunlight. Dawn, midday, nighttime. Fish act differently in all of those conditions. So in hours of where the sun is at its highest, or when it's going to its highest, fish usually seek shelter. So they will be around structure, they'll be in deeper water, around vegetation, around the rocks, and that's when the sun is high. At times like dawn, first light, they're usually closer to the surface and closer into the shoreline because the light is low. They feel a little bit more protected, I think. The clarity of water is something else that we need to talk about. If the water is dirty, muddy, like it usually is where we are here in sunny old Portsmouth, fish usually hunt more by smell and their lateral line. So lures with a thumping tail or with like scent embedded in them. You know, you can get these lures with squid scent and things like that. So on dirty water days, use those kind of lures because they're hunting, and you're fishing, they're hunting by vibration because they can't really see. So they need to use their smell and they need to use their lateral line. That's what their lateral line is there for. It picks up vibration from around them because they can't see what they're gonna eat, but they still need to hunt. In clear water, fish tend to be a little bit more selective in what they're looking for because they can see more the size, they can see more the shadow. So that's when you need to match the hatch a little bit more and be more up on your game on the size of the bait fish, the color of the bait fish and things like that. And we touched on it a little bit earlier about the changes in the weather. If there are sudden changes in the barometric pressure, that affects the way that the bass feed. How it does, I don't know because I'm not a barometric pressure scientist, but it does. A weather front that has dropped the barometric pressure, the fish might become a little bit more lethargic. Then you get a front that's got some warmth and it raises that pressure, which can cause them to be a little bit more active. So if you didn't catch anything that day and you fished right before or just after a weird change in the pressure or a weird front, that may be why you didn't catch that day. So take note of it. If you don't go away with anything from this video, please go away with write your stuff down, man, and do your research before you leave home. What is the weather like? Check the weather, check the pressure, check the wind direction. If you can, there are apps online where you can check even the swell in the water. Check all of that stuff. Make sure you have everything dialed in before you get down to your spot, because that's going to help you better plan what you're going to use at the spot that you're going to, or it's going to help you choose the spot that you're going to. Look at your weather conditions, see what's happening, see what's going to happen the day before, see what's going to happen the next day, so you can make a calculated plan, and hopefully when you get down there you can get some fish on the end of that rod, because we all love bending that rod, dude. The more you learn all of this stuff, the more you notice all of the signals that the environment is giving you, the less times you will go home without not catching anything. You got to have a winning mentality. You got to have patience. You got to have persistence, because this whole fishing thing, man, is not an instant success. It takes patience. It takes mental stimulation. It takes pain and agony. But in the end, if you pay attention to everything, you will succeed. I can promise you that. Don't ever compare yourself with other fishermen either. That is probably the worst thing you can do. Pay attention to what you're doing. Pay attention to yourself, and that's how you will get better. That is just a fact. And remember why you fish. Fish for the experience, man. Fish for the chill of it. Fish for the figuring the things out. Remember why you fish. Remember that your fishing success isn't always measured in how many fish you caught or how big that fish was, but how much you enjoyed it and how much you learned from it. The fisherman that never gives up is the one that always goes home with a smile, even on the most difficult days, even when he doesn't catch, even when the weather sucks. And did you know that usually some of the most successful days out fishing are the days after a frustrating session, because you've written your stuff down, you've gone out, you've learned, and you put what you learned into practice on your next session, and bang, almost every single time. The real failure is not going back out into the water with what you learned.